It is Sierra coming to you live on Tuesday, and I've got some updates on my personal life, but as per usual, I'm going to start with a song that is relevant to what I am talking today or talking about today. And the song is actually one that I wrote. So you'd think that after so many lives I wouldn't get that adrenaline rush right beforehand, but it happens like every time. Get a super huge adrenaline rush right before I jump on live. So that being said, I don't even remember what I titled this song, but it's like the first snippet of a song that I wrote several years back, and it's completely applicable for right now. And so here it goes. Well, I know you're hurting, and I know you're torn. Let me make it better for you. Let me help you through the storm. I know how hard it must be to face another day, but you have got to keep on and do it anyway. 'Cause even though you're knocked down, even though you're beat up, even though the world is pushing you down, you have got to get up. You have got to be strong. And together we'll make it through. I want you to know you are not alone. I believe in you. So I wrote that a long time ago because one of my friends at the time, her daughters were going through a really, really tough time. And the song just kind of rose out of me because we're not in this alone together. There's struggles going on. There's always something. There will always be hard times. There will always be struggles. And that's the reason that song kind of rose up out of me. But today I want to start out by asking you guys, what is your number one go-to for recovering from a bad day? If you have a bad day, what is the number one thing that you like to do to help pick yourself up? So type that down in the comments below. If you are tuning in live, type that you're live. Let me know you're here. And if you watch this on the replay, go ahead and put replay down below. But that being said, I want to jump into this topic of how to quickly overcome. I do have an action step that I'm going to give a little bit later on towards the end. But I want to jump into, because today I was actually up at the hospital with my son. It was his 5th surgery in the last year. And honestly, I wrote about this in another group. Nobody would have faulted me if I had decided to slow down, if I had decided to stop, if I had decided to step back. Nobody would have faulted me. Everyone would have supported me for taking care of my family and being there for them. And I definitely have been. I've been able to be there for them because I have my own business. I can work from home. But at the same time, if I had stepped back from my business completely, nobody would have faulted me. Everyone would have been okay with it. They would have been extremely supportive. But at the end of the day, I would have known. I would have been the one lying in bed in my own thoughts, thinking to myself that, Sierra, why didn't you do this? Sierra, you could have changed your life and you didn't. And so I knew that I had to rise up, because every day I'm telling my kids, you can be great, you can do whatever you want. And if I'm telling them that, but I'm not doing it in my own life, what kind of a hypocrite does that make me? To tell my kids that they can do something, but then I'm not doing it for myself. So I knew that I had to step up. I knew that I had to rise above whatever the obstacles were that we were overcoming. And that being said, I want to talk to you a little bit about your character, right? So again, the question for today is, what's your number one go-to for recovering on a bad day? What's the number one thing that you do when the day ends? What do you do? So that being said, hi, Joel. Thank you for commenting live down below. So if everything is going good and you're upbeat, you're positive, you're committed, you're consistent, it really says nothing about your character or who you are. But when the hard things happen, and those hard things, they are going to happen. There's always going to be something going on. When those hard things happen, how you react is a clear reflection of who you really are on the inside. And so I tell my kids that all the time, that, when they're nice to people, when people are nice to them, it doesn't really say much about their character. But when somebody's mean to them, if they're still nice back, that says who they really are, because it's when that stress and that pressure comes on you that the true you inside of yourself kind of comes out to the surface. So that's integrity. And John Maxwell was the first person who put this idea of integrity down inside of me, that integrity is being the same person no matter who you are or where you are and who you're with. So if you are the same person no matter where you are and who you're with, that's integrity. That's what having integrity means. And so my husband has this other quote that I really, really love. And it says, when you're stressed, you don't rise to the level of your proficiency or your capability or what you're able to do. You sink back to the level of your training. So what have you really been training yourself to do? How have you been training yourself to react? How have you been training yourself to overcome in any kind of situation? Yeah, Joel says, that's very true. I let mean people bother me too much. Yeah, it's one of those things, you know, who are you being when you get in those negative situations, when you get in those bad situations, when you have that struggle come against you? Like I said earlier today, you know, I was a little worried prior to my son's surgery today. I didn't express this. I didn't share it because I don't like to voice my worries out loud. It's one of those things that I tell myself on the inside, I'm like, you're focusing on something that hasn't even happened yet. And you need to reframe or refocus yourself onto something, a positive thing that could happen. Like, what's the most positive thing that could happen? And so I tend to reframe things for myself, because I don't want to ever put my happiness in somebody else's hands. So I love my husband, but at the end of the day, I have to make my own self happy, and then he can add value to me. But I leave my own happiness up to myself, and I make sure that I'm bringing myself back to that place. So I want to talk to you because there's a lot of circumstances that happen. There's circumstances going on in the world right now. Before this last week, there were circumstances going on for a few months. You know, before that, there was something else. Like, there's always something going on. And then when it comes down to a personal level, like if somebody gets sick or somebody dies or somebody's, you know, maybe your pet falls ill or one of your friends is having a hard time, something is always going on in your life or in somebody's life that's directly connected to you. And the thing is, you have to have this resiliency to be able to face those things. You have to have a plan in place before you get to that moment, because if you don't plan now, you're going to just be in a reaction phase and you're just going to react. So you have to be proactive. You have to think ahead and kind of plan, you know, when these things happen, because I know they're going to happen, how am I going to react? And so I wrote down, says your circumstances are not who you are. They don't define you. And there's a scripture that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And there's another really great quote that talks about your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your character, and your character is how you're known by other people. So that's something that you really have to get in control. You have to know, like, what are your thoughts? Because your thoughts are controlling the words you speak. They're controlling your reactions. And so you have to get control, like absolute 100% control of those thoughts. So if you just started tuning in, I asked a question earlier, what is your number one go-to for recovering from a bad day? I think Joel says he usually listens to, if I say her name wrong, forgive me, Sia, is that how it's said? Somebody correct me down in the comments if that's wrong. Give me some phonetics there. I actually listen to her too. I just don't ever look up the phonetics of how to say her name. But so yesterday I actually shared a little bit about the law of reflection. And it's basically like looking at what's happening in your circumstances as a reflection of what you've been focusing on. And so it's kind of mirroring back to you whatever you've been focusing your attention on. So I got the law of reflection from when I did the Maxwell plan. And this is John Maxwell's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And there's this really cool quote in here. It says, if someone's going down the wrong road, he doesn't need motivation to speed up. He needs to stop, reflect, and change his course. And so a lot of times we start reacting. We get in that reaction phase because we weren't proactive beforehand. We didn't plan ahead. And it can cause us to, feel like, okay, I just need motivation so I can keep going. But a lot of times we just have to stop, take a step back, take a breather for a second, step out of the situation from that third party, 30,000 foot view, just kind of looking down at the whole situation and saying, okay, let me give you a really clear example. So there's been a few times where I've gotten into an argument with somebody online, and it was clearly a misunderstanding. Guys, I'm human, forgive me. But in that situation where I'm arguing with this person, all of a sudden I realized this person was not actually attacking me. This person, for whatever reason, had been through a circumstance that caused them to feel a certain way, that based on something I said, they thought that I was acting a certain way. So I took a step back and I looked at it and I realized that they weren't reflecting me at all. They were reflecting how they felt from a previous situation beforehand. And when I realized that, I was able to step back and say, oh my gosh, this person is just feeling a little insecure and I need to help them through this, because that's what being a good leader is all about, right? So that being said, I said a minute ago, your circumstances are not who you are. They don't define you, but they are a reflection of the actions that you've been taking. Your results equal your past focus. And that was something I talked about in a post yesterday. So I have a really cool action step that I'm going to jump to here in a second. And it's something that kind of transformed my life a few years ago. And I think that it could be really cool for you to do too. So that being said, my mom told me this story, and she didn't tell me until recently, which is really funny because it's like, Mom, if you have these hidden gems inside of you, why aren't you teaching me more? So a long time ago, when her dad was alive, my grandpa, he used to tell her whenever she would make a mistake or something really bad would happen in her life, he would look at her and he would go, well, did you learn something? And that was it. Like, that was the simplicity of it. Instead of him getting really mad at her or reprimanding her or shaming or guilting her. And a lot of times we'll do that to ourselves, even if we don't voice it to other people. We'll hold on to that guilt and shame, like I should have done better. I shouldn't have made this mistake. But if you learn something, that makes a huge difference. There's a quote that I say all the time. It says, we either win or we learn, and the more we learn, the more we win. Because as long as you're moving forward, as long as you're reflecting on those mistakes or failures, as long as you're reflecting from that, you're learning and you're going to win more in the future. So here is the action step. You come up with a key phrase. So every single time you have a mistake or a failure or something bad is happening, you come up with this key phrase and you write it down on a little note card. And you read this note card out loud 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, until it becomes second nature to you. So that when you go through those hard times, like for me, taking imperfect action a few years ago, I was yelling at my kids a lot. Like there was a lot of stress in my life at the time, and I would yell at my kids a lot. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to change. And so at first, when I first started reading off my key phrase, it didn't click right away. But later I would realize that happened, and I would say, this is the phrase I wrote down. I learn from my mistakes and I take action to change right now. And after I would say that, I would sit down and I would reflect on that situation and say, okay, if this situation happens again in the future, what am I going to do to make it different? How am I going to be able to prevent this? Okay, so I know that my kids got into this mess and they made this huge mess in the house. What can I do to prevent that from happening in the future? How can I help my kids in this situation so that we can all have a more peaceful household or a more peaceful situation or relationship? And that's just one example. I mean, I use this all the time. I use this in business. I use it whenever I'm dealing with people online. I use it whenever I'm dealing with people in person. We all get into those situations where we feel like we've made a mistake, or we feel like we've had a failure, or there's some struggle or obstacle in our way. And I've got to tell you, the darkest storms always have the brightest rainbows afterwards. And if you are facing something really hard right now, like what I've been going through with my son, if you are facing something really hard, know that there is a rainbow on the other side if you will just push through. I really like this one scripture. It talks about, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for he is with me. And it talks about the rod of correction and the staff of, I don't remember which one's which, but anyways, it talks about your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And it's kind of talking about that whole shepherd mentality. But the key phrase there is you walk through the valley. You don't sit there and hang out in it and mull around and all that like bad juju and that the bad feelings. You don't sit there and dwell on it, because whatever you look for, you're going to find it. So if you're looking for that negative stuff, you're going to find the negative stuff. And if you're looking for the positive stuff, you're going to find that too. And it kind of is like a snowball. So the more negative things you look for, you can have this whole negative snowball happening where now it's like you remember, you know, your mama's cousin, sister's uncle, when you were 5 years old, said something mean to you. And you remember that thing that your friend did back to you in elementary school. And like all these other bad hurts start coming up because your body, or your brain rather, your brain is making those connections to all the negative stuff. But it happens just the same on the positive side too. So again, the question that I asked today is, what is your number one go-to for recovering from a bad day? Put it down in the comments below. And then guys, if you're going to do this action step, I want you to let me know. Tell me that you're going to do this. Tell me that you're going to come up with a key phrase, or steal mine. Borrow it until you have something better. The key phrase is, I learn from my mistakes and I take action to change right now. And guys, you can't just say it. You can't just type it in on your phone. You've got to get a note card or cut out a little piece of paper and get a pen or a pencil and actually write it down. Because when you write it down, it's been scientifically proven that your brain processes it and learns it in a different way. And then you have to say it out loud, because there's power in the spoken word. Your body, your brain processes information in such a different way than if you just read something. If you read something, you're only learning and gathering the information on one level. But as soon as you speak it, now your mouth is involved in that, your ears are involved in that, and your mind of reading and your eyes are involved in that. So your brain processes it completely different. So you got to read it out loud. And you get it memorized. And then eventually it starts coming up that when you're getting into that moment where you're going to explode, or you're really mad and you're about to respond to somebody, or, you know, you got a bad customer or something like that. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to take that step back. I'm going to take that 30,000 foot view. I'm going to look at the situation from their perspective. And then I'm going to take action to change, to make sure that in the future, I don't react negatively. In the future, I'm able to better handle this situation. In the future, I can move forward and I can overcome. And honestly, if I hadn't been through, and guys, I've been through a lot in my life, like the stuff going on with my son, if I hadn't been through some other stuff previous to that, like my 2-year-old, I have 5 kids. My 2-year-old is the first kid out of all of them who ever started having febrile seizures, which I'd never seen before. I'd never even heard of them, didn't know it was a thing. My husband was away for training. He's in the Army. And I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I thought, because he had like a really easy gag reflex. So he was nursing, and I thought he was choking, because he would choke sometimes, and I'd sit up and I'd pat his back and then he'd be fine. And I was patting his back and nothing was happening. And I yelled for my daughter. She had a friend spending the night. I yelled for my daughter to come in, and her friend came running in. They flipped on the light, and I looked, and his lower lip was blue, his tongue was sticking out, and his eyes were rolled in the back of his head, and his body was actually like convulsing. So it was extremely scary. And apparently he'd been having a febrile seizure so long that he was at the point where he had kind of passed out. And I called 911. It took me a split second. I was like, do I call my husband? Do I call 911? What do I do? And I called 911, and they talked me through it, and they told me it was a febrile seizure, and it was because he had a really high fever. And I feel like if I hadn't gone through that, then I wouldn't have gotten to the point where, you know, I was able to recognize that my son was having seizures. My 12-year-old was having seizures, and I didn't recognize it right away. Last year when it started happening, he actually was in the kitchen cooking for our family. And he picked up a hot pan during what's called a focal seizure, where he was still moving around. And he got 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his hands. We didn't even know what was happening at the time. But throughout the day, as we were going to the hospital, I realized, oh my gosh, this was probably a seizure. And it kind of prepared me for that moment. And so it was a really hard time. It was a really big struggle for me when it first started happening, because you start thinking, you know, why is this happening to me? And it's like, I told my son, because he did ask me that one time, you know, why is this happening to me? And I said, I don't know why it's happening to you. but I wouldn't wish it on anybody else, because I know how strong you are, and I know that we're going to make it through it. And if it wasn't for past struggles and learning to persevere, learning to go through that valley and get to the other side, I wouldn't have been prepared for that. And the thing is if you are going through something difficult or hard, if you are having a struggle, I mean, we all have those down days, especially if you are a serial entrepreneur and you work really, really hard all the time. You're going to have those down days where you wake up in the morning and you're like, why am I doing this? Where you're just so tired. You kind of get that burned out feeling. You have to give yourself some time off. You have to give yourself some time to reflect, and you have to do the action step that I shared. So if you're tuned in a little bit late, I asked you guys, what's your number one go-to for recovering from a bad day? Joel is the only one. There were like 10 or 11 people on here a few minutes ago, and nobody commented down below. You guys have to let me know you're here. So I wrote down, experience is not the best teacher, but evaluated experience is the best teacher. So guys, let me know your thoughts. What are your thoughts? Are you going through a struggle right now? If you are, comment down below. You don't have to tell me what it is unless you just really want to. And what is the one action that you could take? What's the key phrase that you could take? If you're going to do this action step, let me know in the comments below. And if you're just tuning in, you have to go back and rewatch, because I shared a song that I wrote. I shared the story about what's happening. If you've looked at my personal profile, you know that my son was in there for his 5th surgery today. And one of his surgeries was a brain surgery in March. And then he had his 5th surgery. It was his 4th skin graft surgery. And he has been through a lot, but I'm telling you, like, because we have been through so much, he has become so resilient and so strong. And because we don't sit there and dwell in those negative spots, we push through and we go through that valley. We don't hang out in the negative valley. We push through it and go to the other side. We push through the storm. We don't sit there and just stay in the storm forever. We go through to the other side and we find that bright rainbow. We find the good things to focus on and the good things to like pull us through. So there's an action step in this video today. There's a question that you guys need to answer down below in the comments, and let me know you're here. If you watched it live, put live. If you watched it on the replay, put replay. And if you guys have any questions or you have any really cool topics that you'd like me to talk about, man, I've been through a lot, and I've got some really cool action steps that help with overcoming those major obstacles. So let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys again next time if there aren't any questions. The book that I read from today is The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. It's part of the Maxwell Plan, and I went through the Maxwell Plan a few years ago when my husband was getting his leadership degree from Texas A&M University, and it was life-changing. It was definitely life-changing. So as far as my son goes, he's had his last surgery for the year. We have a couple more weeks. We have a couple more weeks, and he's going to get his, it's not a cast necessarily. It's all soft wrapped, and then there's some splinting on his hands, but they put dissolvable stitches. It's on his left hand this time. And so he actually had burns on these 3 fingers and this thumb, and it went through the web space here. And so this finger, she said, was okay. These are the ones they worked on today and releasing the web space there. So his hand is like this right now. And apparently he can't shower for like 2 weeks. So he's a 12-year-old boy, so he won't be stinky. And man, if you just saw, like, I am so amazed how resilient our kids are. Like, kids, this next generation that's being raised right now is going to be incredible. I'm so excited to look at this next generation of leaders. So I gave you guys a minute to ask questions. I don't, oh my gosh, a lot of people have been commenting and I totally missed it. You guys, oh my gosh, you guys love me. Bear with me. Thank you for your patience. It says that there's more comments and I didn't scroll down. I completely forgot that there was a scroll. Oh, look at all this. If you can get to it, can you touch on releasing and forgiving bad memories from the past that bother you? Okay, so since you asked that, Andrea, I actually went through something, and the bad memory and the forgiving, there's actually 2 different times. Okay, so I'll bring up one. When I was, so I'd made a big mistake about right when my husband joined the military. I'd made a really big mistake during that time, and I felt guilt and I felt shame. Nobody was shaming me. Nobody was guilting me except myself. I just felt like I was a horrible person. And there was this one day that I was in the shower, and why are shower moments like the clarity moments? I don't know. But I was in the shower and I was just by myself, and this thought just kept coming back up in me, and I kept trying to cast it down. I was like, man, I cast that down. And I realized it's like when you plant a garden and you pull out the weeds. If you don't plant anything else new in that garden, the weeds are just going to come right back because the wind blows and it blows new weed seeds there. And so you actually have to plant a new good thought. So if you're guilting and shaming yourself, you have to cast down that old thought and you have to replace it with something new. And Tony Robbins talked about this with money mindset in one of the talks that I was listening to. And one of the money mindsets that I realized that I had was that I kept hearing the scripture growing up. It said, money is the root of all evil. And I realized that, money, the Bible doesn't say that. The scripture doesn't say that. It says the love of money. So if you love it, that's the root of all evil, is when you fall in love with the money rather than falling in love with the people or falling in love with your customer. And so when I had that aha moment, I kept, reframing it for myself. So that's one side of the coin. Another time there was this neighbor that was two doors down from us. And she started wanting to hang out with me all the time. And she was taking time away from my family because she was starting to invite me over all the time. And she was extremely negative and extremely draining. So I decided to just gently take a step back from her and not talk to her as much anymore. And, to have other things to do and be a little bit busier. And she started going online to the social platforms that I was on. There was a rants and raves in our neighborhood. So like all the people that I knew, and she started like telling everyone that and she used a curse word. So you guys excuse me. She said I was batsh crazy, that ever since I got pregnant, I was batsh crazy. And I was like, oh my gosh, like all I did was like gently stop talking to you. And I've been extremely nice to you. And there's a scripture for me that carried me through that. And it says, vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord. And so I kind of let it go, and I put it in God's hands, and I cried. I cried a few times. I was really upset by that. Like it hurt me bad, but I was just like, you know what? I'm not even going to do this. I'm going to be the bigger person. Like, I'm not going to stoop to her level and talk about her like that and be that person, because that's not who I am. That might be who she is choosing to be right now, but that's not who I am. And so I moved forward, and I just focused on other things for a time. And eventually one day she came to my house and knocked on my door, and I answered, of course. I never ignored her in that way if she ever actually reached out and tried. But she came up and she apologized out of nowhere. I didn't prompt it. I didn't push her. I didn't talk bad about her. I didn't do any of that stuff. But she came up and she apologized to me for all of the things that she had said and done. And she's like, I was so awful to you. And I was like, yeah, you were. I felt bad, and I never did anything, and I had a chance to just kind of be honest with her. But, if you have negative people in your life who they're bringing in negativity, I got some really good advice recently, and they said, I'm going to let them know I'm going to love you from a distance. Right now I'm focusing and I'm pursuing some really big things, but I'm going to love you from a distance. And I have some really, really great mentors who shared that with me recently. Mr. Hayes said, I've written it out before, but made a vision board with it as my phone's wallpaper, getting more in the habit of reading it. As far as vision board stuff goes, my husband and I actually talked about this, because he and I both, we're not into creating the one board that you do throughout the year. I actually created some targets and put them up on the wall. My husband and I, we've done, bow and arrow and shooting range stuff before. So targets kind of resonate with me, like hitting a target and hitting that bullseye. So I put what my top 5 goals are up on my wall, and then I put some images with it with the targets. And I actually hit one of them recently. If you didn't see my car post, I got this car that was on my targets. So another way that you use vision boards is just like Mr. Hayes was saying, that he puts it up on his wallpaper on his phone. So you see it all the time. One thing to keep in mind when you do that, like, I actually want to make sure that my relationship stays strong. So I put a really great picture of my husband as my background image. And then I make sure that I have that connection with him. And it's this picture of his face. Like, there's a certain way that he smiles at me, and I feel really confident in myself, and I feel really confident in our relationship when he smiles at me this way. So that's the image I chose, because if I'm having a down day and then I open my phone and then there's my husband's face smiling at me, it gives me a lot of personal confidence. So that's another reason I did that. But I have vision stuff that I do that is on my phone on Google Drive, so I could pull it up on my computer, I could pull it up on my phone. My husband likes to write his stuff down in a notebook. I have other friends who use a binder. There's so many different ways. Like, as long as you're putting the vision of what you want in front of you and keeping it in the forefront, like if you want to go on a certain vacation, like maybe you want to go to somewhere tropical, start getting things that are tropical and putting them around you all the time. Maybe you get some of those like scented plugins or candles or something like that that smell kind of tropical. Maybe you buy pineapple or get some kind of juice that's tropical, and you start drinking that all the time just to get that vision in front of you, so your subconscious mind goes to work searching for the answers. Is anyone up for a really cool exercise? Let me see, there might have been another. Yeah, there's at least one more question. So if anyone's up for a really cool exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and it's this one that Tony Robbins does. Okay, so what you're going to do is you are going to look around the room that you are currently in, and real quick, you're going to look around for everything that you see that's blue. I'm choosing blue because my wall is blue. So right now, look around for everything that's blue. Do it as fast as you can. Find every single thing that's blue. Look around your room. Find everything that's blue. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that's blue. And this is really funny, because even though I know it, like, it works for me too, even though I know what the end result is. So you look around, you find everything that's blue. Okay, now you're going to close your eyes and keep them closed. Don't sit here and watch me for a second. Keep your eyes closed. So you found everything that's blue. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine those things. See those things in your mind. Remember all the things that you saw that were blue. Keeping your eyes closed, think about everything in there that's black. And then open your eyes and look around and see how many more black things you find. So the fun thing about that is that whatever you look for, you're going to find more of. Like, when I was pregnant, I saw pregnant women everywhere. Or when I really wanted to be pregnant, in that time before I got pregnant, I saw pregnant women everywhere, and I wished for it. When I wanted to get a new Suburban, anytime I saw a new Suburban driving down the road, I noticed it because my subconscious mind was focused on it. Now I have my new Suburban, so I'm not looking for that anymore. That's so funny. Or maybe I still am. I don't know. We'll find out. But with that color exercise, we're so programmed to win that whatever we're focusing on, we find more of. And I gave a quote about focus earlier. So your results equal your past focus. So whatever results you're seeing right now is what you were focused on in the past. So if you can change your focus, you can change your results. It's that simple. It's that easy. Anyways, I love that color exercise. So if you missed it, go back and watch it, and do it. Do it right. Close your eyes when you're supposed to. He said that's so true. Yeah, like when I get a new car. Okay, so there was one other question here. Let me go back up. I spent 7 years in prison, and even though I made myself successful, I still have trouble accepting that I deserve more. What advice do you have? So the thing is that it doesn't matter what mistakes you made. I kind of gave a background on my shower story, and that is 100% applicable, because for me, I made mistakes, and I'm not at a point in my life where I'm ready to share how bad I felt and what I did. But it was bad for me, based on my morals and how I was raised and everything. And I guilted myself. Like, I thought that I was like a sinner going to hell, and I was the most horrible person in the world. And it's so incredible, because at any moment you can change your life. There's this really, really cool story of Jesus being on the cross, and there's the two other guys there. And the one guy who's like, he's getting hung because he's this horrible, horrible person back then. I don't know what all bad things he did, but it was bad. And he looks over, and and he asks if he can be forgiven. And Jesus forgives him because it's that simple. And I love that. Not saying that, you have to believe what I believe, but saying that forgiveness is already yours. And the only person who doesn't see that you can be a good person and that's holding you back and that's guilting and shaming you, the only person is you. And it's your belief. And you have the decision, you have the ability to change that at any time that you want. And the way that you start that is by going to that garden of your mind and uprooting those old thoughts, casting them down, and you got to plant something new. Like that same idea that I had about money, where I thought money was the root of all evil. And then I realized, money is not the root of all evil. It's the person who's using the money. Just like with any kind of a weapon can be used for good or it could be used for bad. A weapon can be used to protect. Like my husband used a machete the other day to kill some poisonous snakes that were in our yard. It can be used to protect or it can be used to harm and hurt people. And it's all about the person and what they choose to do. And at any point in your life, you can choose to be the person that you want to be. It's all about getting at the garden of your mind and starting with your thoughts, because your thoughts become your words become your actions become your character, and your character becomes how you're known to other people. So it all starts in your thoughts. And if you've been thinking it for a very long time, I didn't mention this about the shower story. Whenever I was in the shower that day and I was having that thought and I casted it down and I was coming up with the new one, the very first day, it was every few seconds that thought was coming back up in my mind. And then it was a minute, and then it was 5 minutes, and then it was 10, and then it was 20, and then it was about an hour, and then it was a few hours before the thought came back. And so the first day is going to be the hardest. But if you keep reminding yourself who you are, because it's who you're choosing to be, just because you made mistakes in the past, I said this earlier, your circumstances are not who you are. They do not define you. They're just a reflection of the actions that you've taken in the past. So whatever you did in the past, that's not who you are now. I mean, I was probably a dumb kid. I probably made a lot of dumb mistakes, and my dad looked at me and said, I don't know what's going to happen with this girl. But who I am now, I love who I am now. And if you have made those changes in your life and you begin to realize the good things and focus on the positive things and stop looking at the negative things as bad, like going back to what my grandpa used to say, did you learn something? I actually have a cousin. I love him so much. And he's been sent to prison before. And he was into drugs. And it's a really tough thing for me, because his brother was one of my best friends growing up, and he actually died of drug abuse. And anyways, my cousin who was into drugs, he went to prison, and then he was let out on early release. He had changed himself and he had done really, really well. But as soon as he got out, he hung out with the same people with the old mindset. And he got back into drugs, and he got back into prison. And it's one of those things that it's like I said, the prison system is there for a reason. It's there to help people, like to teach them that these things are bad. That it's not like the drugs are bad, okay? It's not just that. It's that habit and that lifestyle is destructive, and it's going to hurt you. And that's why you're going to prison, so that you can learn and so that you won't have to go through that anymore. And I didn't want him to stay out. Like, if he was getting back into drugs, I wanted him to go to prison, because that prison moment taught him something that showed him that there was a better way, that showed him that there was more for his life than just falling back into these negative pathways. And the same thing happens, and it applies for anybody. If you went through something that was hard, if you made mistakes that put you in a situation that you are not very proud of, or that you feel guilt or shame over, you can change your future. Like, the past doesn't define who you are. You can be whoever you want to be. You get to choose that every single day. And today, and you can do this with me right now, today, I choose to show up as the best version of myself. Right now. You can choose that right now. So I don't know if you're still on, Joel, but I hope that was helpful. I hope that you realize how amazing you are. Not could be, because all the potential of anything great for your life has always been inside of you. I really like the concept that Bruce Lee talks about with being, like, if you think about a wood carver, and if you think about that you're the wood carver, but you're also the block of wood. So the wood carver, they get this mental image in their mind. So if they're going to carve a bear and they start seeing what the bear looks like, and all they do is they chip away at everything that is not the image of the bear that they have inside of them. And so it's the same thing with you. You know, if you see yourself as that lion, as that bear, as that really strong person, all you have to do is chip away at the things that aren't who you are. And it's just, it's not adding to yourself. You're not adding things to yourself all the time. I mean, you can learn whatever skill you want. You can learn and get really great at whatever business you want. You can always make more money. Those are easy things to do. But really becoming who you are is not adding things to yourself. It's chipping away at the things that aren't you and getting almost a minimalist perspective. So, if that was helpful, let me know. And I did ask a question earlier. What is your number one go-to for recovering from a bad day? So again, if you guys watch this on the replay, put replay down below. If you tuned in a little bit late, you should go back and watch the beginning. I sang a song that I wrote, and I shared why. I talked about what was going on with my son. I shared a really cool action step that's really simple that you guys can do. That will just help you be able to face things in the future. And guys, honestly, I use this action step not just for recovering from mistakes, but I use this also for reframing my mind. So if I have certain principles that I want to refresh myself on, if I have certain things that I've put my faith out there for that are on my vision board, or it's something like with my son's hands, whenever he first burned them, like we wrote the vision down on note cards, and we read the vision that we had 3 times a day, every single day, like taking your daily dose of food or something, your daily medicine. Life-giving words are like medicine to your soul. So, thank you, Joel. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. You'll have to, you might have already done it in the comments, but I'll have to get that correction on how to say your name properly, because it's a really cool name. I like it. And, I love it. Matthew says, yes, ma'am. Come on, Cierra Lueck, you're speaking my language. So if I didn't hit your question today, if you're watching this on the replay and you have a question and you drop it down below, I can maybe answer it in the comments, or I can answer it on next Tuesday's live. You guys, I'm freaking proud of myself for showing up live today and planning to show up live. You know, the only reason I'm live right now is because I planned for it. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let these circumstances stop me from being consistent in what I've set out to do for my life and what I've set out to do for other people and the value that I've set out to give. So just know that, you know, use the action step to stay consistent, to be consistent in those actions. He says, my recovery is to take a breath and go to sleep. Tomorrow's a new day. Yeah. So what do you do? What do you do when you're stuck up at night and your brain is just going 1,000 miles a minute? And you've got all these ideas running through? Well, you put it down on your radar. You have your top 3 things that you're going to accomplish tomorrow, and whatever you aren't going to accomplish tomorrow, you put it down on your radar, you write it down, and we call it mind dumping. And it's where you write stuff down and you know that you're going to accomplish it in the future, but you know that it's not the most important task tomorrow. There's a really cool book. You can find it on a download for free if you type it into a Google search, Eat That Frog. And it talks about knocking out like the biggest, hardest thing first thing in the morning. That's what the whole book is about. It's really great, by Brian Tracy. So anyways, top 3 tasks, do that, plan that the night before, and know what you're going to accomplish. And if you don't accomplish those, don't guilt yourself. Just carry them over to the next day, get it done the next day. It's okay. Some days we have great days where we get like 10 things accomplished, and some days we have days where we can barely get 1 accomplished, and that's okay. That's part of life. And you just gotta like give yourself some grace. So I love that you talked about going to sleep at night. one of the things that I've been working on is shutting down my electronics and shutting down social media and shutting down work at a couple hours before bed so that I actually am able to fall asleep. And when I do it, it works. So I love that. And when I work out, I also sleep better too. So I make sure that I'm more active and more energetic. I've got my Garmin that tells me how many steps I took. I'm not going to show that to you guys. I was sitting in the hospital a lot today, and I took a nap because we were up at 3:30 this morning. So I love you guys. Drop some love in the comments below. If you think that this was helpful, I leave these lives on public so that you guys can share it. If you think that there's somebody that you know that this would be valuable for, share it with them. My friends list is very open right now so people can add me as a friend, and I will talk to you guys on next Tuesday's live. And remember to drop your ideas in the comments or shoot me a message and let me know your idea for the next live, and I will see you guys next time.